Safe to Serve family, first-time viewers, welcome to this midday power surge. And today is going to be a potent, substantive, eye-opening lesson today. I wish I had other synonyms to express the urgency of the times in which we're living in, to express how close we are to the end, so we can understand it's time to implement these 5 keys of survival. And today I do have a special guest, Marie Diaz from Eyes on the Times. Welcome, Marie.
Thank you so much for having me, Pastor. It's great to be back.
Let's get right into it. What are you focused on?
Right. So, Pastor, we've often on this channel talked about an open air prison. And of course, that has mainly been with regards to what has been happening in other countries. But what we're going to see is that today, some of those elements are creeping into the United States. And we're going to see the implications for us today.
And as you can realize that what we was talking about, everybody, these aren't events that transpire several years in the future. We're talking about a crisis, a draconian, barbaric system that is now being put in place, not only by this administration that's calling for every American to be forced to wear a trackable, traceable device within the next 4 years. This is also being implemented by other tyrannical organizations, institutions around the world. This is from Satan's playbook. Because when you understand the great controversy between Christ and Satan, you will then realize it is Christ's plan to make us free. But it's Satan's plan to imprison us, make us captives, make us slaves. So as we are hearing and seeing these events scream, they shout, the close of probation is near. Just wait until we get to the climax, the crescendo of this lesson. Bible-believing students, prophetic students, your eyes are going to be wide opened as you realize that we're even at the doors to the mark of the beast crisis, persecution, the second coming of Jesus Christ. We don't have much time. Marie.
Sure. So, Pastor, we're going to begin first by taking a look at a few headlines so that we can see or hear this breaking news. The first one, again, is coming from a New York Post, and it says RFK Jr. wants every American to use wearable health data collecting technology. And of course, for those of you who may not be aware of it, RFK Jr., he is the Secretary of the Health and Human Services here in the United States. And so, of course, he plays a very important role. And the fact that he's the head of the health department is going to be significant as we move further on in this presentation. Again, the next headline tells us, again, that he wants to have this implemented within the next 4 years. It says, during a House committee meeting Tuesday, Kennedy announced a large-scale ad campaign from the federal government to hype wearable technology. So, of course, you've got the engine of the United States government behind this movement. So this isn't about private companies, trying to compel people to purchase these items. You have the force of the government saying that you're going to need or be required to wear these wearable, like I said, data collecting devices within the next 4 years. And so we're going to take a listen to a clip so that you can hear what the Secretary of Health and Human Services had to say for himself.
Here it is.
Secretary Kennedy, my first question is that there is a tremendous amount of research that shows that greater engagement with one's health leads to better outcomes. In recent years, American innovators have created and improved wearable devices so that not only are consumers able to better engage with their health through monitoring data, but they are able to share that data with providers. I believe American consumers, in line with the 21st Century Cures Act, should be able to access these innovative wellness tools. Secretary Kennedy, do you agree that consumers should continue to have access to these tools?
Absolutely. In fact, we're about to launch one of the biggest advertising campaigns in HHS history to encourage Americans to use wearables. It's a way of people can take control over their own health. They can take responsibility. They can see, as you know, what food is doing to their glucose levels, their heart rates, and a number of other metrics as they eat it. And they can begin to make good judgments about their diet, about their physical activity, about the way that they live their lives. We think that wearables are a key to the MAHA agenda, making America healthy again. And we are going to, my vision is that every American is wearing a wearable within 4 years.
Marie.
Yes. And so, of course, they're going to sell you on what they deem the benefits of these wearables. But, bear in mind that these wearables are also collecting data on you. And of course, it starts, right now he's saying your health data, but we have to know that eventually they're going to transition to other data. I want you also to pay particular attention to the fact that he said that these wearables are a major part of this MAHA, this Make America Healthy Again agenda. And we're going to just take a look at two tweets that came out from the Secretary of Health and what he also had to say about biometrics. He says that he wants to make American biotech accelerate. And even in these tweets, he goes along to say that the wearables, he mentions AI tools and also a personalized app for Americans. And of course, at surface value, all of these things seem harmless, but if you're not paying attention to it, you may not realize that this is the tread down the path to introduce, a what do they call it? A not a carbon tracker, but a social credit score, all of these elements, all of these things that they're using, and you're empowering it with AI, which is able to go through a ton of data, should, ring alarm bells for many of us.
One quick point here. What he is recommending to be forced on Americans within the next 4 years is not something new. Because right now, Americans already wear trackable health devices on their person, on their bodies. How many steps per day am I taking? On my smartwatch, tracking my heart rhythm, etc. The point here is, Americans are doing that by choice. By choice. But what they are now recommending to be implemented, it's by force. That's the difference. And even if Americans do it by choice, it is still dangerous, because now you're giving over all your personal data to who knows who, the tyrants. Number two, American government is doing this. Later on, we'll see the private businesses are also doing it. Stay tuned for that, my friends. Number three, could it be that what they could not get accomplished fully with the pestilence 19 inoculation into your system, now they are going to do it another way, by putting various devices on your person, and once it's on your person, on your skin, it can do the similar damage to your body as the pestilence 19 elixir. Wake up, my friends. Marie.
And Pastor, even with what you're saying there too, you see how there's kind of that frog in the kettle, because they got us, acclimated to using these wearable devices, right? And now, that you're okay with it, they're going to require everyone, to wear this, as you mentioned. But
hold on, Marie. Hold on. Now, everybody, think about a time in America very soon, wherein if you refuse to put on your person whatever trackable, traceable health device they are going to roll out, then can they not say you cannot access various services? Really, I'm thinking about hospitals. You can't access the ER in an emergency. You can't undergo surgery because you have refused to put on your person the government's trackable, traceable, quote unquote, health device. Oh, Pastor, the cynic, the scoffer, the mocker was, that would never take place. Was your head in the proverbial sand during the pandemic? When people who rejected Babylon sorcery, they were cut off from accessing services? Wake up, Marie.
Yes. And of course, Pastor, for those who haven't dug beneath the surface, it does seem very innocuous, right? But here we're here to, pull the cover off so that we're able to see, the broader view, a better perspective. And so that we're also able to see that this is just another element in the system that they're erecting, this digital system, which of course eventually is going to strip us of our freedom. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at another component of this system that is being created or erected under this current administration. And we've talked about this before, but just so that we can refresh your audience, we want you to take a look at a few headlines here. Recently, President Trump has announced this $500 billion Stargate AI venture program that he's developing. And of course, it's going to be powered by AI. But with this headline, I want you to pay attention to who he's using to help to head this program. Of course, there's Oracle, there's OpenAI, and also SoftBank. And we're just going to touch and go on a lot of these articles. Like I mentioned, we've already discussed these in time past. But the next article tells you who specifically behind those companies is going to run the program. It says SoftBank CEO Mr. Sun will lead massive $500 billion Stargate project with OpenAI Sam Altman and also Oracle Larry Ellison. Now, you may be wondering, why is this important? Why are we trying to connect the two? The reason why it's important for us to look at this is because both of those individuals, Sam Altman as well as Larry Ellison, have made some very intriguing and interesting comments, which I think once you realize what they said, it'll start to make sense. So let's continue looking at this next article here. This is coming from the Fortune. It says, Larry Ellison predicts rise of modern surveillance state where citizens will be on their best behavior. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. The next article tells us that Larry Ellison says that AI will someday track your every move. But I don't want us to stop there. This is a new article that many of you may not have seen, and this is coming from the other individual. This is coming from Sam Altman. Listen to what he has to say. It says, Sam Altman tells staff to plan to ship 1 million devices that see everything in users' lives. Have mercy, right? It says OpenAI CEO Sam Altman is teaming up with a famous Apple designer to make wearables that can see your whole life. So I think that we need to pause here for a moment and connect the dots here, right? So on one end, you have a prominent figure, RFK Jr., who is the head of the Health and Human Services, saying that they are going to require, as Pastor, as you've mentioned, they're going to require every American to wear wearables within the next 4 years. On the other hand, you have two other prominent figures who are now going to head this AI infrastructure that President Trump is establishing, and they're telling you it's going to track all of your movements, right? And so, I mean, you have to see that these things are connected. I hope that's clear.
And again, that's clear for me and for the audience, I believe. And also understanding the barbarism that's connected to it. I could already hear the sentiments being expressed from the tyrants. In order to save Americans money and to save lives, we want all Americans to wear these devices we are rolling out. By the way, do you realize Apple is leading the charge? Apple company, which brings us back to the Garden of Eden. What did Eve actually eat? Pause right there, I'll come back. If you go back and take a look on how health was used as the precursor to lead into false worship, track and trace, and persecution, you'll understand as it was in Daniel 1, Daniel 3, so it's going to be in the last days. No wonder inspiration says The last work is going to be medical missionary evangelism. I could just see how God is saying, my people, take this as an opportunity to go now and warn, enlighten, and reach individuals. Because I believe, Marie, there is going to be a large, there is going to be a percentage of the population who understood what happened in the pandemic. And now they are going to repel whatever the government is now proposing, even by force. But now they are still concerned about their health, about their well-being. And if we are in the right position, we can now evangelize, inculcate, instill in their minds the truth for this time and win those souls to Christ. Let's not waste this opportunity. And of course, it would be a neglect on my part to tell God's professed people, it's time to separate yourselves from Babylon's devices as much as possible. Use only the ones that are necessary right now. A time is going to come, we will have to throw away all of them. Some are still important, but tell me something. Why would you have all these devices? They all do the same thing. Is it because of pride? Do you wear them for fashion? For show? Well, luxury will make you a luxurious slave. Where we take it away. We're not playing games today.
Yes, Pastor, I concur with what you're saying. You know, and unfortunately, looking back at the pandemic, Seventh-day Adventists missed a great opportunity to be a lighthouse in the world, to be able to show that God has given us principles to be able to bring restoration and healing without needing to go, through, the current medical system. And so this, as you mentioned, this could be another opportunity for us to see what is coming and to establish ourselves so that we will be ready for the Lazarus house of individuals that will be needing our support and our help. The article continues. It says, the new AI companion device will be unobtrusive, capable of fitting inside a pocket or on a desk, and will be fully aware of a user's surroundings and life. It remains unclear whether the device's awareness will include recordings, and if so, where such private data will be stored. So, I think it would be pretty naive of us to assume that if they can create a device that has the capability of, recording us, that they won't include that in there. And of course, think about your cell phone and these Alexa devices and all of these things that we have, they already have those capabilities. They're just making it wearable, something that's in your home. And, further, we're entering uncharted waters here. We've never seen something like this take place, or we've never seen the U.S. government, promoting biometrics. So again, this is a reason for us to pause and also for us to see the broader implications. Again, I touched on this earlier, but imagine not only collecting your health data, right? But what about your finances, your schooling, where you attend church, your job? All of these, can be incorporated into this data collecting device here.
Marie, continue.
Yes.
We have a lot to cover today, and these are potent reports.
Right. And so, obviously the next question that we have to ask ourselves is, what would this look like for us, when we're, because sometimes we can talk about these things, but we may not necessarily know what it would look like or what it would mean, the implications are for you and I. So we're going to take a look at a clip. And this video actually came out in 2019. So we're talking about 6 years ago. And I want you to see just how draconian some of these wearable devices. And of course, the context for this clip is that it is an employee based wearable device. But if they're able to do it with you, an employee and an employer, of course, they can do it with anyone. And so I want you to see what they were capable of doing 6 years ago. And then I want you to imagine what they could potentially do now. So again, this is a series of 2 clips. So let's take a listen to that.
Clip 1.
So it knows if I'm speaking or not speaking. It knows if I'm moving, whether I'm walking around or just sitting at my desk during the day. It knows generally where I am in the office, and it also can tell my proximity to other people wearing badges.
We have a number of sensors in them, Bluetooth that's able to do location in the office, microphones look at how much I talk, motion sensor to look at posture, overall activity levels.
Okay.
A grim new reality emerges.
COVID-23 has mutated.
You know, before we go there, let's talk about what we just saw. Marie.
Yes. So just to reiterate a few things, they talked about the fact that it can monitor your conversations, right? And it knows your location. It has motion sensors, right? And it can also integrate other data, other information. All that simply means is that they can gather information from wherever, whatever, right? Social media, your driving record. I mean, you name it, they just need to be able to have some sort of means to be able to integrate it. And they're saying that they have that capability. But what I also want you to mention is the fact that they said that the next step for these employers is to begin microchipping, their employees. And, I have to ask, at what point are these employees going to say enough is enough? You know what I mean? And I feel like this is why God wants us to be independent of the system, to be the head and not the tail, because when you own your own business, when you work for yourself, you have a modest job, whether it's a farmer, whatever it is, you don't have to settle for whatever the employer says that you have to do. I can't even imagine being at my desk. In the video, they also talked about how the webcam will just randomly take your picture. It's absurd. Pastor, I remember a while back, you talked about how they talked about scarves and putting something that'll electrocute you. We're not cattle, but you can see how this slavery mentality is coming back.
So what I just saw, big picture, high level, is that these wearables, trackable, traceable devices are being pushed not only by the government, but by the private sector. These are private businesses promoting the same as the government. But now this administration is promoting this to take place within the next 4 years. Do you realize all these draconian systems are converging in the same time period? Marie.
Yes, I was going to mention that. Of course, this is why if you're not paying attention to all of the moving parts, you may miss it. And Pastor, it just reminds me also that this is this biometric surveillance system. When I spoke about the fact that they can incorporate all of this other data, it's so that they can centralize the information. But moving forward,
No, you won't move forward yet.
Okay.
Because when you use that word, it triggered something. They want to centralize our data. That's exactly what Testimonies for the Church, Volume 9 and page 11 says. The agencies of evil are combining their forces and consolidating. They are strengthening for the last great crisis. Great changes are soon to take place in our world. And the final movements will be rapid ones. That's what we're seeing here. The centralizing of wealth, power, and information. We're seeing it right now. Wake up, my friends. Implement the 5 keys of survival and also read the book Education, page 228. Marie.
Yes. And now the point that I want to drive here is that, Satan is the great counterfeit. Everything that God has, Satan attempts to counterfeit. And I say that, in this regard, because what we're going to see with the next clip is that, the Bible, God has given us prophecy so that we can see what is going to happen in the future. And I believe that Satan is attempting to do the same thing, except he gives us predictive programming. Now, I've never seen this movie before. I'm simply going off of this trailer. This clip that we're about to see is actually from the movie called Songbird. And in this, what you're going to see, which is so interesting, is that they are using the exact same things, the exact same devices that they're saying we're going to be required to use within the next 4 years. And so this clip is very, very short. It's only 17 seconds long. But I want your audience to pay particular attention to three things. I want you to look at what the gentleman on the exercise bike is using to be able to screen himself. Okay. The second thing I want you to pay attention to is I want you to see what the man who says I'm immune, what he does to prove that he's immune. Thirdly, I want you to pay attention to what the younger woman does to the woman that's sick and on the bed to be able to screen her as well. So let's take a look at that clip and then we'll discuss it thereafter.
A grim new reality emerges.
COVID-23 has mutated.
Beginning thermal scan. Thermal scan normal.
Hey, whoa, I'm immune! I'm immune!
Beginning thermal scan. 3, 2, 1. Anomaly detected.
I saw it. Marie, I saw it.
Right.
Did y'all see it in the studio? Y'all saw it? Marie, go ahead.
I mean, it's right there. He raised his arm, Pastor, to show that he had a wearable. Is that coincidence? And then remember, this is within a health, the context of a health crisis. He talked about COVID-23. Is that, come on. We have to be able to see this.
Carry on.
Right. And so back to what I was saying, again, this is within the context of a health crisis. Again, let's pause and let's put the pieces together, right? You have the Secretary of Health and Human Services is telling you that everyone's going to need to wear these wearable devices. Now you see this predictive programming through this movie is telling you that you're going to have to wear one to be able to prove that you're immune. Not just that. Is it coincidence that the World Health Organization just signed onto this pandemic treaty, the world? Do you see how they're going step by step by step? And like I said, if you're not paying attention to all of the elements, you're going to miss it. So let's take a look at this headline here.
Hold on.
Yes.
Must insert this because this is what people voted for. So those people whose eyes are now being opened, you must realize you voted for this.
Correct.
Number 2, look at the deception. Out of their mouths, they would say, we are not in alignment, agreement with WHO and the UN. But by policy, they're doing the very same thing. Deception. And that's why in Matthew 24, when the question was asked of Christ, what will be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? The first thing Christ said in verse 4, let no man deceive you. Take it away, Marie.
Yes. And just to put this plug here, we are neither for the donkey party nor we don't engage in politics. And so we're not bashing one party over the other. This is why we stand outside of politics so that we can see things from the right perspective. So I just want to put that there because, a lot of people will accuse us of being a part of the other party. But as I mentioned here, we just want to take a look at this article that's coming from the World Health Organization. And it says World Health Assembly adopts historic pandemic agreement to make the world more equitable and safer for future pandemics. So this is the first time that this has taken place. And again, just look at the steps and how these things are happening, and so we have to ask ourselves, is it plausible or is it just a mere coincidence that all of these things happen to be lining up? Again, let's go back a little bit. We're looking at a $500 billion AI infrastructure that's going to have the capability to track you wherever you go. Then they're shipping these devices which can see everything in your surrounding, can do recordings. And then, Pastor, we've talked about this in past presentations, but we didn't even discuss the fact that in October, at least in the EU, they're going to begin the CBDCs, right? And of course, America has their own version. Of course, it's the privatized version of a CBDC, and that's the stable coins. And I've been following that, and it's already passed one, I can't recall if it's the Senate or the House, but it's already passed one department. And so now they're going to send it, to the other house. It's moving right along. And then remember, like I said, we talked about how they've introduced, digital ID, or should I say the real ID, which is digital. It's just another form. All of these things are lining up. And so, it's not a coincidence that too, we're seeing that they've agreed on this pandemic treaty as well. I mean, what are the odds? You have to be willfully ignorant to think that it's mere coincidence.
One word, surrounded.
Absolutely.
One word, surrounded. And Christ says, when you see this, flee. Flee. Mountains, country living, 5 keys of survival. Marie.
Yes. And so now, again, a lot of people are saying, well, of course, I can see how this is going to happen. I can
By
see.
the way, Marie, hold on.
Yes, sir.
In the studio here, that movie you showed, the trailer, is called Songbird.
Yes.
I believe his partner, his mate in that movie, his girlfriend or his wife, I don't know, was actually in non-compliant status. And to make sure that she was not taken off to a quarantine post and or a concentration camp, he had to work some form of deception, long story short, and brought to her a wearable device. And that's how he was able to save his girlfriend from being, quote unquote, imprisoned. Because, of course, she tested and the result was positive for whatever pestilence. And to save her, he broke the rules just to get her that wearable device. Again, this is predictive programming. Art imitating life, and life is about to imitate the big screen. Art, we're seeing it now. So what will it take for God's people to realize that dots are being connected, the jigsaw puzzle is coming together? 5 keys of survival. Implement them now. Marie.
Pastor, please help me out here. There's a quote where Sister White talks about step-by-step yielding to popular demand, right? And I'm saying that because...
Volume 5, page 81.
Thank you. Because if you think about that, for many of us, and there, to be perfectly fair, there are some individuals who may not have had the knowledge that we have had about what took place during the pandemic and may have accepted some of the measures and things that they've done. But this is an opportunity for us to see what is happening. And so if you yielded then, there is a possibility that you're going to yield again and you're going to continue to yield. And so you just have to wear a wearable. You just can't go to a certain place unless you abide by this rule, that rule. And so at some point, we have to stop abiding by the rules and say no and be okay with saying no. And Sister White says something interesting too. She talks about how, we're going to have to suffer from derision. And I don't think we really think about that. The fact that we're going to be hated and the finger of scorn is going to be pointed at us because we buck the system. This now is when we have to start taking a stand and realize that we are going to be hated. But if you don't, what are you going to do? Yield to the system? Who knows what they're going to do? Force you to get an implant? We have to stop now. So back to what I was saying, many people may say, well, of course, I can see how, this is unfolding and that this is something that they're going to do in the future. And yes, there are some employers who are implementing these measures now. But I want you to see, and this article, I believe, came out in 2022. And I want you to see what the UK suggested that they ought to do about the migrant crisis. So let's take a look at that. First headline, it says, smartwatches could soon be used to monitor migrants in the UK. Unbelievable, right? Let's look at this next article here. It says migrants, convicted of a crime in the UK may soon have to submit 5 daily facial recognition scans via a smartwatch as part of a sweeping new surveillance practice under consideration. Of course, it goes on to say that privacy advocates say the always on surveillance wearable is cruel and unnecessary. In addition to facial recognition scans, migrants forced into the smartwatch program will also submit real-time location data. So just to sum this up, again, the things that they were doing in the video and they suggested in that other clip from the economist about how they're able to track your location and recording, and now you got to submit facial recognition, and they're using smartwatches to be able to do this. So you have to know that this is where they're going. And, of course, I talked about the fact that, they're going to start, with the healthcare system, then it can go into the financial realm and also identification. Everything is being digitalized. And as has been said in time past, all they need is the right crisis. We saw what happened during the pandemic and how that was a crisis that they were able to force individuals to essentially go against their consciences. And lastly, I want to say that the World Health Organization has also said that the climate change is also a health crisis. And so they're able to roll all of these things in together, in a package for you. And so we're closer than I think many of us realize.
Based on what was just stated, imagine for a minute, everybody, the Waldenses running from the persecutors, country property in the mountains, wearing a smartwatch. Just imagine that. Go back and read in the book, The Great Controversy, the chapter entitled The Waldenses. And history is going to be repeated. Fashion is going to lead to your destruction. And luxury will make you lose your liberty. How about being a fashionable slave? Oh, by the way, a happy slave. Welcome to 2030. You own nothing, you'll be happy. Marie, take it away.
Unbelievable. A fashionable slave. Wow. So as we're going to move on here, now we saw in the previous clip how the employer said that the next step that they're looking to do is they're looking to microchip their employees. I'm going to prove that this is the general agenda. And what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at a clip in which Klaus Schwab, who was a former head of the World Economic Forum, he's going to say the exact same thing. Now, I want you to pay attention because he's going to say wearables while he's speaking, but I want you to pay attention to the words that are said in this video. It's going to be tight because I believe he's speaking in French. So let's take a look at this first clip.
Aujourd'hui, au bout de ça, on parle de puces qu'on pourra s'implanter. Ce sera quand ça?
Certainement dans les 10 années à venir. Et d'abord, on va les implanter dans nos vêtements, c'est-à-dire wearables, comme on le dit. Et après, on pourrait s'imaginer qu'on les implante dans nos cerveaux ou dans notre peau. Et à la fin, peut-être il y a une communication directe entre notre cerveau et le monde digital. Ce que nous voyons, c'est une sorte de fusion du monde physique, digital et biologique.
Mercy.
Right. So did you catch that?
I saw it. I heard it.
He wants to integrate the physical, digital, and the biological world. Again, it's about control. We're going to take a listen to another clip. And once they have this control, I want you to hear what he desires to be able to do. So let's take a listen to this last clip here.
Advancing very fast. But can you imagine that in 10 years when we are sitting here, we have an implant in our brains, and I can immediately feel, because you all will have implants, and we measure your brain waves, and I can immediately tell you how the people react, or I can feel how the people react to your answers. Is it imaginable?
I think that is imaginable. I think...
Mercy.
Yes. So I love how he said that you will have an implant. Like we have, we can't oppose this agenda. But again, this is just to illustrate the point that he eventually wants to try to be able to read your thoughts. I mean, it's nothing but mere control, like this insatiable desire to control not only your movements, but your thoughts. It's very satanic. So hopefully we're able to see this based on this presentation.
And those two last clips confirm the fulfillment of end-time prophecy in Daniel 2. This is not a news channel. We are looking at current events fulfilling prophecies. Friends, you just heard Klaus Schwab say he wants to merge the physical with the digital. Next point, are we becoming machines? Understand in chapter 2 of Daniel, just before the second coming of Christ, when that stone smites the image, it hits the image on his feet. What elements are actually in the feet? It's iron and clay. Clay, God made man out of dust. Dust represents clay. Genesis 2 and Job 33. Understand this, my friends. Iron, machines, iRobots, etc. Machine and man being merged together. Just as they can program machines, now they can program us. Wake up. They can now control a machine. Imagine now you have on the wearables, they can control you. I'm getting to it right now. It's the prophecies being fulfilled. Daniel 2, verse 40 through verse 45. The vision is sure, Daniel said. We're living in that time right now. Go back and take a look at Spiritual Gifts, Volume 3, page 63 and 64. If there was one sin above another that brought the destruction of the race by the flood, it was the base crime of amalgamation of man. What were they amalgamating man with? What are they amalgamating man with today? Robots, the digital world. And that brought the destruction of the race by the flood. As it was in Noah's days, so it is going to be in the last days. Now, with that in mind, take a look at this. So remember, the brain chip is in the future, but the wearables would take place sooner, within 4 years. Watch this, wearables.
So, I am a futurist. I'm not a perfect predictor of the future, but I'll give you my 1 year, 5 year, 10 year. So focusing in the world of wearable technology as opposed to implanted technology. And I do believe that within
a few years, expect the wearable technology. That was 2023. Hold on. If people don't realize that what RFK Jr. is proposing to implement in the next 4 years has already been proposed and have already been implemented, they would think RFK Jr. he's some great, discoverer of some great ideas to save America, make us healthy. No. We have seen and heard this before. Watch carefully.
Right to mental.
Listen.
3 major ethical issues I'll just put on the table. One is the context in which they'll be used. When used by individuals to gain better insights into their personal health and well-being, this is a great use case for people to gain greater introspection and interoception. When used coercively, for example, in an educational setting or in a workplace where people are mandated to have their brain activity monitored, it becomes deeply problematic that this final frontier of privacy is one that people can't reclaim.
Stop. She's talking about wearable devices. Next,
And the last and deeply concerning area of ethical concern is the aggregation and the collection of this data, especially in a world in which most business models for major tech companies have been based on the aggregation of personal data in ways that allow them to gain insights about individuals, but also allow, for example, targeted advertisements, the use of kind of closed loop systems that change environments and respond.
Friends, I haven't gotten to my crescendo as yet. Next clip.
But it turns out that that kind of technology in the workplace, particularly when it's used to monitor productivity of employees, where they're moving throughout the factory floor, whether or not they're taking breaks or unscheduled breaks, is the kind of thing that employees resist, unionize against, rise up against, and undermines morale. What we've seen consistently is companies from Amazon to Tesco to Walmart and others have introduced what is considered to be bossware or surveillance technology that employees really don't like it, even if it makes their lives better. Okay, well, if you don't like your job, just quit. But what if there's nowhere to go? What if everywhere has ubiquitous monitoring?
Mercy. Marie, I know you want to chime in.
You know, Pastor, Sister White says that slavery is going to return. And I think we may be looking at slavery from the traditional sense, right? But this, again, is slavery, right? You're being controlled by devices, by technology. You can't go outside of your 15-minute city. You in your own home, the privacy of your own home. You know what I mean? We have to know. And remember, once they get you into a position of slavery, then they can force you to worship, force you to take inoculations, force you to consume bugs and all of these other things. It's time to escape the system now.
And one of the most important aspect of someone's life is health. It's not money. Because if you're dying, sick and dying, what use is money to you? It's health. So would they not mingle poison with wholesome food to get you to accept it? Here is now my crescendo. Let's go back to these two statements from RFK Jr. 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth paragraph, last paragraph left off your screen. His words: we're clearing the path to transform great science into real cures. Great science into real cures.
We're about to launch one of the biggest advertising campaigns in HHS history to encourage Americans to use wearables. It's a way of people can take control over their own health. They can take responsibility. They can see, as you know, what food is doing to their glucose levels, their heart rate.
Enough. Friends, we're talking about wearables for Make America Healthy Again. Science, real cures. Watch this. In the book Evangelism, page 606. And remember now, one quick preface, remember now, the wearables you'll be forced to wear on your person, on your body, will give the government all data on you. Look at this statement now. The apostles of nearly all forms of spiritism. The word apostles is not used positively, but negatively. The apostles, which means people who are sent. Apostles mean spokesperson. The reps, the apostles of nearly all forms of spiritism, claim to have the power to cure the diseased. Watch this. They attribute their power to electricity, magnetism, and the so-called sympathetic remedies. How will wearables from the government transmit data? Electricity. Your body is naturally electric. Electricity, magnetism, that's what it is, friends. Internet, signals. The signal is received and transmitted from your wearable device. And by this, they attempt to cure diseases. Now watch this. Or to latent forces within the mind of man. So not only wearables now, but even in your brain. It's all there in Sister White's writings. Next sentence. And there are not a few, even in this Christian age, who go to these healers instead of trusting in the power of the living God. Notice now. So by accepting what the government is proposing, you know what you're doing? You're going to the God of Ekron. Satanic remedies. Next paragraph, volume 5, page 193. While they speak with scorn of the magicians of old, the great deceiver laughs. The great deceiver laughs in triumph as they yield to his arts under a different form. Satan's agents still claim to cure disease. How so? They attribute their power to electricity, magnetism, or the so-called sympathetic remedies. Watch this. In truth, they are but channels. In truth, they are but channels for Satan's electric current. Why? By this means, the devil casts his spell over the bodies and souls of men. In short, these traceables, wearables, to cure disease in America and globally, in truth, they are but channels of Satan's electric currents. By this means, the devil can cast his spell over your bodies and your soul. Because think about it. If that device can track and trace your heart rhythm and different things in your body, temperature, your blood pulse, etc., even cholesterol level, blood glucose level, and transmit that data via internet, wireless, can they not backdoor put something in the code to speed up your heart rate or slow it down until you fall into a coma and become comatose and drop dead? And it's years after, hindsight, why were so many people dropping dead? Oh, the wearables. The pandemic, you remember that, friends? The pandemic? Why are so many people, etc., blank, fill in the blank? Oh, Babylon sorcery, but it's too late. When will God's people wake up and forgo these so-called fashionable devices? Marie.
Mercy. There's so much, fashion will prove the ruin of many, but not just that, Pastor, I just want to say that God in his mercy foresaw a lot of things that were going to happen to the children of Israel beforehand, and he gave them the opportunity to flee. I think about, for instance, in the time of King Ahasuerus, right before the persecution of Esther and Haman, the children of Israel had the opportunity to flee the system, of course, but because of comfort and because, they were able to get premium health care there in Babylon, they were able to go to the grocery store as opposed to making their own bread. They stayed in the comfort, right? As opposed to leaving, right? And yes, they had to start from the bottom up, the wilderness. There was nothing, but it was for their benefit. And I think that we have to look at what's happening in the same regard. Many of us may not want to lose those freedoms and privileges and things that we desire, the conveniences here in the cities, but we have to flee because we can see this, the shutting of the gate, as Catherine Austin Fitz often says. She says the shutting of the gate, it's happening. They're talking about 4 years. And again, there's so many things that are happening in this, the short time, right before 2030. And so it's time to escape. That's all I want to say, Pastor.
Amen. Marie, we all need prayer.
Amen.
2 Corinthians, I believe it's chapter 2, verse 11. We, lest Satan should have an advantage over us. We are not ignorant of his devices. The last two statements I just read, they speak to spiritualism. Do you know what the bonding slime is? The cement, the glue is between Protestantism, apostate, and popery to bring in the mark of the beast? It's spiritualism. So could these policies in the area of health, spiritualism is laying the platform for that slavery system? Father in heaven, we thank you for this midday power search lesson today. We thank you for the Holy Spirit's presence, guidance, impressions. May we take heed to what we have heard, felt, and seen. May we not be like Lot's wife and her 2 daughters, but may we be found implementing the 5 keys of survival. Keep us faithful, we pray. We thank you for hearing. Thank you for answering, is our prayer. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen. Marie, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Safe to Serve family, first-time viewers, by God's grace, I'll see you all on tomorrow for Midday Power Surge. And remember, this coming Sabbath, June 28th, join us here in person at our Center for Evangelism in Georgia for aggressive, effective evangelism. The protest continues. Get ready, remain ready, get others ready. Maranatha.